Historical movies are the most visible genre for costume design. Some people literally call them costume dramas, highlighting the eternal popularity of ball gowns, corsets, and dashing uniforms. To be honest, I'm often frustrated by the way historical clothes get far more praise and attention than contemporary costumes. But at the same time, I totally understand the appeal. If you're a fan of costume design, you can't help but admire the work that goes into these films. So, how do we break down such a wide-reaching genre in just one video? Look no further than the filmography of Keira Knightley, the queen of costume drama herself. Hi there, I'm Gavia Baker-Whitelaw and this is Behind the Seams, where we decode the world of costume design. As a fan of historical fiction, I've long been fascinated by the concept of historical accuracy. This phrase gets thrown around a lot, both by filmmakers promoting their own movies and by viewers criticising their work. You can probably name a few notoriously inaccurate films, like Braveheart, Amadeus, or Gladiator. But the idea of historical authenticity is more complicated than debating a film's relationship to real events. Biopics are routinely criticised for painting their protagonists in a rosy light or twisting their lives to fit a simple narrative. At the same time, they're often praised for their meticulous recreation of specific historical details. Netflix's royal drama, The Crown, is a great example. It painstakingly copies real clothes worn by Queen Elizabeth, and the actors all imitate famous public figures. Yet the narrative is skewed to the point of propaganda, sidelining the damaging cultural impact of the royal family and British colonialism. Needless to say, our political biases have a huge impact on how we view historical fiction. The idea of historical authenticity is complicated, influenced by our own experiences, our aesthetic tastes, and our tolerance for what we perceive as anachronism. You could make a whole YouTube series just about this topic, so I had to find some way to narrow things down. That's why we're starting with Keira. Born in 1985, English actress Keira Knightley had her breakout roles with Bend It Like Beckham in 2002 and Pirates of the Caribbean in 2003. Since then, she's been very prolific, best known for historical movies like Pride and Prejudice and Atonement. Keira Knightley's image is inextricably linked with historical films where she plays women who fight for love and independence in a male-dominated world. But while this may sound like typecasting, it's a really clever strategic move. She found a niche that lets her play a variety of lead roles, without having to accept the often sexist parts offered to women in Hollywood blockbusters. Keira's career runs the gamut from serious biopics to action movies to sweeping literary adaptations. This gives us a great canvas to talk about how historical films use costumes to tell a story. But before we delve any deeper into her filmography, I want to share a quick look at my own philosophy for costume analysis.
No, I prefer to be unsociable and taciturn. Makes it all so much more enjoyable, don't you think?
It's very simple, beginning with 3 questions. What do the costumes say about the character? What do they say about the film's tone and setting? And what do they say about society? That last point is a complicated one. We must consider the biases of the filmmaker, the expectations of the audience, and cultural ideas about fashion, gender, and where the film is set. Today, we're only talking about English language historical movies, but these questions can apply to anything.
Do you really need a philosophy to make something comfortable?
Well, behind every object there is a philosophy.
Contemporary films involve more character-based costuming than historical dramas, because the audience is more familiar with modern clothes. Even if we're not consciously thinking about it, we'll notice minor details and draw our own conclusions about what they mean.
13 million and you drive this piece of shit cross country to pick me up?
Blew it all on the suit.
For instance, when we watch a teen movie, we already understand the basic visual archetypes for jocks, nerds, goths, and cheerleaders. And if a woman is wearing jeans and a t-shirt, we can tell at a glance if she's meant to be a tomboy or a soccer mom or casually sexy. There are plenty of ways for modern fashion to illustrate a character's personality, cultural background, or thematic role. This is harder in a historical setting where viewers don't speak the same visual language. In many cases, striving for true historical accuracy would be unhelpful because viewers just won't understand the nuance of what those costumes mean. Some movies, like A Knight's Tale, use purposeful anachronisms that we recognise as modern cultural references. Okay, back to Keira.
You look lovely, Elizabeth.
Her first big role was in Pirates of the Caribbean, a fantasy blockbuster whose costumes combine real historical research with a Disney theme park idea of what pirates looked like. Elizabeth Swann is introduced as a beautiful society lady wearing a tight corset and a crinoline skirt. She then spends the rest of the film in either the classic damsel outfit of a thin white dress or in a red ball gown she's forced to wear by her captors. She's an obvious example of a female character being used as eye candy, but it's still an exciting role with a lot of personality, and she gets more practical outfits in the sequels, eventually becoming a very stylish pirate king. Elizabeth Swann defined Keira Knightley's image for a generation of viewers, and of the 29 lead roles she's taken since Pirates of the Caribbean, 15 were historical movies. Several are what I'd describe as classic costume dramas, where opulent outfits are a big part of the appeal. In The Duchess and Anna Karenina, her characters are glamorous and rich, starring in sweeping love stories. Atonement is a more serious example of the genre, but its most iconic image is still all about fashion, that green dress designed by Jacqueline Duran. So, what do these costumes tell us about character, setting, and society? Well, I'd say that they're aimed at people who like mature emotional dramas, but don't want to see a visually ugly side of history. Films like Anna Karenina and Atonement, both directed by Joe Wright, use historical research as a springboard to create a beautiful world that appeals to modern tastes. Alexei! Which brings us to Keira's most famous collaboration with Joe Wright, Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice is the ultimate regency romance, a genre popularised by the writers Jane Austen and Georgette Heyer. Their novels take place in early 19th century England, usually focusing on the upper classes. It's such a narrow setting that fans have a very specific idea of what to expect, from the costumes to their depiction of class, etiquette, and courtship. Even if you know nothing about the period, you'll probably recognise Regency fashion. Women in flowing, high-waisted gowns and curled hair, and men wearing riding breeches, tailored coats, and cravats. When Joe Wright adapted Pride and Prejudice in the early 2000s, he entered a crowded field with one already iconic example of this exact story, the 1995 miniseries starring Jennifer Ely and Colin Firth. Wright's version leans more toward drama than comedy, with Keira Knightley playing a more outdoorsy version of Elizabeth Bennet, and Matthew Macfadyen as a youthful, tormented Mr. Darcy. Unlike most Regency romances, Wright opted for a dirty, grounded aesthetic. Instead of seeing people trade quips while wearing pristine white gowns, Elizabeth's family wear practical, rugged clothes while living alongside farm animals, contrasting with Mr. Darcy's wealthy social circle. Some people might view this as more authentic than traditional Regency romances, but for all we know, it strays from Jane Austen's original vision. Her books combine social satire with romantic comedy, and we don't know whether she'd approve of a gritty viewpoint or prefer more escapist, idealised adaptations. There's also the matter of Keira Knightley's own appearance. No historical drama truly reflects its setting, because beauty standards change drastically over time. Keira Knightley looks like a modern catwalk model, and some of the outfits and hairstyles in this film are clearly rooted in 2005. Historical filmmakers love to talk about research and authenticity, but you rarely see them giving actors bad teeth, or smallpox scars, or casting women with unfashionable body types. Keira Knightley always looks like Keira Knightley, and her beauty is a key part of her image as a historical heroine.
You look the same, apart from the uniform, of course.
Most of her roles are flattering, not bothering to change her appearance to resemble real historical figures. Her filmography offers a very coherent brand, highlighted by the rather different tone of her first big role after Pirates of the Caribbean. The 2004 King Arthur movie is an amazing example of Hollywood's warped idea of gritty realism. The film's goal was to tell a more grounded version of Arthurian legend, taking place in 5th century Britain. The Roman Empire is on the way out, and Arthur is a half-Roman soldier played by Clive Owen. Keira Knightley plays Guinevere, a member of the native British insurgent forces. The tone is grim and murky, with Arthur and his knights wearing heavy armour. Meanwhile, Keira Knightley's signature outfit was a kind of leather bikini worn during the final battle sequence. As a powerful warrior, she's meant to subvert our assumptions about Guinevere, a fairy tale queen. But as a scantily clad 19-year-old, surrounded by fully clothed older men, it's hard to view this role as empowering. Hollywood's idea of gritty realism often involves men being violent and miserable, and women being exploited. King Arthur was a particularly funny example because the film was marketed as a realistic historical take, while photoshopping Guinevere to have bigger boobs on the posters. Not to mention the fact that she'd probably die instantly if she wore that outfit into an actual battle. Keira Knightley's relationship with historical drama tells us a lot about the film industry itself. To reach her level of fame, you have to do a lot of expensive, successful movies. If you look at her peers like Scarlett Johansson, Anne Hathaway and Natalie Portman, you see them alternating between shallow blockbusters and more interesting, low-budget films that play to smaller audiences. But by focusing on historical drama, Keira managed to have her cake and eat it too. In recent years, she's described this as a conscious choice, saying she was sick of being offered contemporary films where she'd play a mother, a love interest, or a victim of sexual assault. For instance, while we all recognise this cute scene from Love Actually, her character doesn't really have a personality. Her job is to marry one man and be secretly filmed by another. He then declares his love while she smiles in total silence. Historical films allow her to land interesting, high-profile roles that don't play second fiddle to a man. So her career was definitely shaped by Hollywood sexism. At the same time, Keira Knightley holds a lot of privilege as a conventionally attractive white woman from a posh background. Like Tom Hiddleston and Benedict Cumberbatch, she's in the target demographic for historical films, which usually focus on rich white people. Pirates of the Caribbean helpfully cemented her image as a wealthy Englishwoman who looks good in a ball gown. In other words, she is the living embodiment of costume drama. Her career is proof that there's a thriving industry for historical movies about rich white women having complex emotional lives, usually while wearing gorgeous costumes. Alongside biopics about famous men, this may be the most popular type of historical film, but Hollywood rarely offers similar roles to women of colour, and there are very few working-class alternatives to films like The Duchess or Atonement. So while Keira has made plenty of amazing movies, her filmography also highlights the restrictive nature of mainstream historical cinema. Our image of historical drama is tied up in our cultural worship of wealth, celebrity, and conventional beauty, and a lot of that is connected to what those characters wear on screen. Thanks so much for watching Behind the Scenes. What's your favourite historical movie? Are you a fan of Keira Knightley? I look forward to reading your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're new to our channel, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Behind the Scenes so you won't miss future episodes. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.